Hello, my name is Eric. I'm a software engineer. This is another entry in my Code With Me video series, resuming work on the Kanban Task Tracker. And I would like to just really today focus on fixing the splicing that we're doing of tasks into other arrays. So if we make an edit to the build UI for search, and whatever we do here, but if we make a change to the status at the same time, build UI for search is what we're looking at, it inserts into the position it would have been in the previous array into its new array. And right now that's what we have programmed, but I'm not a huge fan of that, and I'd like it to just push to the bottom if we are changing the status. The reason this is happening is if we go to our Immer functions, we are within the edit task. We're sending in a whole bunch of data, our board index number, column index number, task index number, so we know where all this stuff lives and the new edited task information we have created. We're essentially deleting the original version of a task, and then we are adding our new task. And within addTask right now, what we have is we use addTask to just make a new task as well. So if we send in a task index, which we are defaulting to -1, a task index would be anything equal to or greater than or equal to 0. And if that's there, then we splice, intending this to be splicing back into the same position in an edited column. Otherwise, we're just moving a task or making a new task, and we're going to push to the end. So what are we going to do to resolve this? My immediate thought is that within the task view card, which is what we call edit task, we receive the new task data back from our task modal, and we have our original task data. So what I should be able to do here is I should be able to, in effect, review or compare, let's say, compare new version of task to previous status, right? So if we say, like, for the moment, let's just say console.log is status the same? Actually, let's say is status original, meaning has it been preserved? Is it unchanged? And we'll say task, which is what we're bringing in, dot status triple equals edited task, not edit task, edited task dot status. So this should just give us a true or false value, right? If the task data, the status of the original task data is equal to the status of the edited task data, then they're the same. Is status original, we should get a true, and if not, we should get a false. So without making any other adjustments yet, let's go look in our console and let's clear some of this stuff out. And let's take a look at what happens. Let's just refresh and I can get my original unchanged view here and make sure everything's good. Open up a board. We will make whatever edit we're making here. Let's do one without. You can drop this down quite a bit. Let's do one without updating the status. And I have to change this to say edit task. Is status original? True. Cool, we didn't make that adjustment. And we see it's, still here with our edit now in the same place. Edit task. Second edit. And now I'll do this to doing. is status original false. So I'm thinking that can help me in how I decide to handle the splice. And I don't exactly know what I want to do yet. So let's expand this out a little bit, or all the bit, all the way. Now let's pull our Immer function over here. And I can get rid of my terminal at the bottom. So I can create, rather than console.logging this thing, I can create a variable and send that over. How do we want to word this? Constant original status equals. And now when we call addTask Immer, we can send that over, of course, right? But what are we going to do with it? Let me make a note here for myself that true is unchanged. So when we call addTask, right now we're always passing in the taskIndex as a parameter, but it's only coming over if it's being called from this particular function. If it's called from the other function I have set up that is to add a new task, it's not sending over a variable, so it uses the default -1, right? But this is and should always be sending in that. Well, actually, I guess what we could do is right here we can control whether or not we're sending in taskIndex isn't defaulted here, right? So I'll still send it over to the Immer function. And then within the Immer function, we can determine, maybe this is a little bit messy and maybe we can refactor this another time, but we can leave this unchanged and also send in the original status, right? Let's do that first. Let's change the way we're doing this. Let's call the status unchanged. That way true would be status unchanged. I could flip this and say status changed and then have the alternate, but I'll leave it as a status unchanged. And we'll do the same thing over here. Status unchanged, which we'll say is a boolean. And before we do anything else, let's just, as we should always be doing, just make sure status unchanged is showing up correctly. And we'll do this so we don't get any kind of confusion. And now we add this over here. Great. So now if we do this, make sure everything is saved. Save all. Now we do this one more time, we should see our new console log with our new note. Status unchanged value, true. Status unchanged, true. Status unchanged, false, right? So here, when we call the addTask method or function, if we don't send in a task index at this time, it'll default to -1 and then should push, right? So what we will do then is, I want to say basically if status unchanged is true, then we do send in task index, else exclude task index, right? I think that's easy enough and what we should be doing here. So before we do anything else, let's actually do a console log and test our logic, right? If status unchanged, if that's true, let's say console.log, we want to send in the task index, else don't send, oops, do it this way, don't send the index. So let's do another real quick test. Edit task, whatever we're editing. Send in the task index. Awesome. Don't send the task index. Okay, cool. That looks like what we want. Now we should, in effect, just be able to update our logic here. And I'm thinking I'm gonna have to declare final board outside of this. And then within here, send in the task index should be here. Let me get rid of that. Else final board equals don't send in the task index. And let's just get rid of that. So I think, fingers crossed, this should all play out for us correctly. Again, let's make sure we've got everything saved. We do. Let's bring this out a little bit more. Let's bring this out even more. Get rid of our console. We don't need that anymore. We'll refresh. And we'll do, do a few tests here. Build UI for onboarding flow at the top of our list. We edit. We edit a description. We may delete a task or two. We don't change the status. Build UI for onboarding flow is still here. Here's our description, and we removed a task. Awesome. All right, let's do this one more time. Build UI for onboarding flow. So now what should happen is we should make an edit here. If we move this to the doing column as we're making our edit, it should push to the bottom. So build UI for onboarding flow, we make an edit. Second edit with status update. We move this to doing. Build UI for onboarding flow now shows up at the bottom of our column, which is exactly what we wanted it to do. So excellent. A nice quick fix. Nothing too terribly complicated. We made our adjustment that we planned to make, and I'm happy with that. I'm not really sure what else I have left. I have a few buttons I need to enable, right? I need to be able to do an add new column, which right now works, but it's just defaulting to a test column value. So you just need to write up the code for that. Need to enable this button, which I forget what it's supposed to do, so we'll have to look at the Figma file for that. We've got all this working. We've got create new board working. We've got our different views working here, where now this has our little menu and create board, and we can switch around and down to a mobile view. Mobile view is working as it's supposed to as well. I believe it should still be okay. I didn't mess anything up. Let's take a look. Yeah, this is looking pretty nice. Let's look at something that has a little more data in it. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. And, ooh, that's not looking good though, is it? So I'll have to go back and look at some of this sizing, which I believe I just pulled from the Figma file, but I'll have to see if anything's going a little bit wacky. It looks better here in this particular one, in the Pixel 5 view. We'll make edits to that in the CSS. But at this point, we're rounding the corner of being done with this application. Not quite sure yet if I'm going to build out any sort of backend for it just to house data. I might just make this a front-end example, but we'll see how I'm feeling. I can always come back to it at a later date and add additional functionality, but this one has been going fairly smoothly, and I'm happy with where we're at, and I'm happy to almost be done with it. So hopefully you enjoyed a shorter session this time around, and I'll see you next time.